Hello. Can anyone hear me?
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, good. I saw one sign on my mic suggesting it wasn't working, so I just wanted to be sure.
Okay, it's good here.
Good morning. Morning, everyone.
Good morning. We're just waiting for the session to begin formally at midday. Then we shall roll out, yes.
Good.
Hi, good afternoon, Wande.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon. Good.
We're gonna go ahead and start now. Good
Yes.
morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another session of Nutrition Conversations Africa. My name is Yewande Kazeem, CEO of Wandieville Media, and I'm pleased to be moderating today's session with my colleague from GAIN, Grace Thuo. On behalf of Wandieville Media and GAIN, thank you for joining us today. At Wandieville, one of our main objectives is to create awareness and demand for nutritious foods, impart knowledge through advocacy support, and call to action on the challenges in the agricultural and nutritional landscape in Africa. The goal for us will be a day or a time where Africa is not associated with malnutrition. Nutrition Conversation Africa, NC Africa like we like to call it, is an advocacy platform aimed at eliminating African nutrition challenges and opportunities, transformative ideas, and game-changing solutions through continuous conversations, call to action, advocacy support, and engagement to curb malnutrition in Africa. Today, we're excited to discuss the way forward after the UN Food System Summit and what it means to Africa. The summit has made us dig deep in transforming our food systems, but most importantly, focus on the solutions to solve malnutrition challenges and hopefully shifts in attitudes on how we grow, process, trade, and consume our food. To that end, we encourage active audience participation. Please add your comments and questions throughout the session into the Q&A box. There'll be opportunities to address your questions and engage in the discussion during the moderated Q&A sessions. To begin the program, I'm pleased to introduce and welcome Grace Thuo, Communications Manager, Country Programs at GAIN. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy, and to everybody who is here today, our speakers and our guests. Welcome to this edition of Nutrition Conversations Africa. It is great to have you join us. GAIN's vision is a world without malnutrition, in which all people have access to and consume nutritious and safe food, especially to the most vulnerable to malnutrition. And as earlier mentioned by Wendy, it is our desire that by bringing this conversation closer home, this nutrition conversation, we can similarly rally much needed local action around nutrition and improved food systems. So we're very excited to be able to have this discussion soon after the United Nations Food Summit. And as you all know, this has been a historic year of action on nutrition. And the summit especially has been a culmination of 8 months of work that has laid the foundation for global food systems transformation. So in our discussion today, we will be highlighting this journey through GAIN's policy advisors' experiences and the opportunities that are now before us, all under the Africa lens. And I would also like to mention that it is a practice for Nutrition Conversations Africa to bring on board diverse voices on the platform, because that is also GAIN's norm in how we work with partners. But for this edition, GAIN policy advisors, having led and or partnered on multi-stakeholder engagements in their respective countries, they aptly bring together these voices from the field. So without much ado, I would like to begin the session by introducing the first speaker, who is Dr. Michael Ojo. Dr. Ojo is a very experienced professional, and he has extensive senior management and leadership expertise, which has gained from a variety of assignments across London over 20 years, and more recently within international trade and development in West Africa. Previously, he was a country director for Water Aid in Nigeria, and he joined GAIN in 2017, where he's leading the Nigeria country office in a similar capacity. So in Nigeria, Dr. Ojo is focused on making healthier food choices more affordable, more available, and more desirable, including work to scale up business investments in nutritious food value chains, to reduce post-harvest losses, secure better diets for children, and progress food fortification at scale. So we are very happy to have Dr. Ojo with us today, and I welcome you to give your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Wande and Grace. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be able to join this second edition of the Nutrition Conversations Africa, focusing on outcomes from the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, what it means for Africa's nutrition stability. So the People's Summit has come and gone, but in many ways, the work is only really just beginning. As Grace said, for 8 months this year, Nigeria, alongside more than 130 other countries across the globe, took time to reflect on the state of our food systems, to understand why so many people are still going to bed hungry every day, and to walk through in a collective, inclusive, and multi-stakeholder way what we must do as countries and as a global community to course correct towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals that we've all agreed are critical for the sustainability and prosperity of all of us as a people and the planet that we occupy. Given the worrying numbers of people malnourished and suffering micronutrient deficiencies globally and in all of our focal countries, and which has been made even worse by COVID and climate impacts, meaning nearly 20% more people are going to bed hungry in 2020, globally compared with 2019. That rise is actually 50% more in West Africa over the same period. It was clear that a new urgency had to be generated around hunger and malnutrition. So the summit, in the way it galvanized action at national and global levels, has done exactly that and more. More in the sense that it has opened our eyes and minds to the multiple implications that the way that our food systems work have for not just how much nutritious food is available and consumed, but also for the impact that food systems have on our climate and environmental sustainability, on livelihoods and jobs, and on the future and fortunes of women, young people, and indigenous peoples, that we cannot afford to face just one way, but that we ensure building the capacity, resilience, and relevance of our food systems must deliver not just human health, but also planetary health, as well as equity and justice. Now, I'm really proud of the role that GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, has played in this process. We saw early on that this was beyond business as usual. And so we engaged in a way to enable us contribute to and influence the outcome. Our executive director, Dr. Lawrence Haddad, was asked to chair one of the 5 action tracks. And in the countries where we work, and even beyond, we put ourselves forward to be a resource to the country systems, contributing our knowledge, our expertise to help make the process robust and the outputs reflective of the wishes of the peoples and governments of the countries that we support, and to translate this into game-changing solutions that will deliver fundamental reforms in the way that our food systems are set up in the short, medium, and longer term. GAIN as an organization took a strategic decision about 5 years ago to focus our energies on transforming food systems so that they deliver nutrition-safe foods in the required quantities and at affordable prices to ensure that we all, especially those most vulnerable to malnutrition, have access to healthy diets. We know that diets are the root of all forms of malnutrition, and that in countries like Nigeria, unhealthy diets are the drivers of 5 or perhaps even up to 6 of the top 10 causes of disability and death in our populations. So what did we find in Nigeria from the 40 or so dialogues that brought together well over 4,000 participants overall? We found that we were largely blind in regard to how our food systems work, from national to subnational and even to community levels. We saw and were reminded of the outcomes of this flawed system, that hunger has continued to rise in Nigeria, with the most recent data classifying 44% of Nigerians as moderately to severely food insecure. That, ladies and gentlemen, is roughly 90 million people. And I will let that sink in. That's the population of a number of countries put together. And this assessment was before COVID actually struck. We were reminded that over a third of our children are stunted, and that less than 10% of Nigerians can afford a healthy diet that provides all of the recommended food groups, including fresh fruits and vegetables. Furthermore, that the way that we farm, fish, and graze our livestock has lowered yields, severely depleted our soils, made us more vulnerable to erosion, led to the loss of habitats and biodiversity, facilitated the loss and waste of 10% of all of the food production on average. In some value chains, this could be actually as high as 40%. And has meant that households with food systems related livelihoods remain some of the most chronically poor and vulnerable to stresses and shocks amongst our populations. So you can imagine that we had a lot of dialoguing to do. And after 6 months of engagement led by the national convener appointed by the government, stakeholders in the country outlined a long list of recommendations, which have been summarized into 6 solution clusters to chart a pathway for food systems transformation across all of the 5 action tracks in Nigeria over the short and long term. These 6 clusters are further summarized by me. These are my summaries as follows. Number 1, investing in data, information, knowledge, and skills development for food and nutrition security. 2, building sustainability, resilience, and responsiveness and inclusivity into our food systems. 3, developing our priority value chains and markets for increased productivity and enhanced livelihoods. 4, increasing demand for and consumption of nutritious, safe foods delivered through markets and through social protection schemes. 5, promoting peace building, environmental awareness and resilience, as well as the wider enabling environment for food systems to work. And finally, linking research, innovation, extension systems, etc., in public-private partnerships for food system sustainability. There may be a chance, and there will be a chance to dive a little bit deeper into some of these clusters and components in the course of our conversation today. However, I want to end by focusing on the big shifts that all of the work building up to the UNFSS has produced. And perhaps one of the most significant outcomes is the multiple new cross-sector conversations and initiatives and pledges of financial and technical investment and support that the summit has triggered. So we've seen the birth of Act for Food, Act for Change, a youth-led campaign for action on food systems transformation. We've seen the coalition of action for healthy diets from sustainable food systems for children and all, which includes a significant set of initiatives on food safety. We've seen the Zero Hunger private sector pledge, which brings significant new funding to food systems. We've seen an alliance for anemia actions and wasting reset, focusing on specific actions to reverse these symptoms through dietary improvements, through women's empowerment and other interventions. We've seen the Global Food 50-50, a gender and food systems accountability initiative. And lastly, just on the list that I've put together, a $50 million gain INCOFIN nutritious food financing facility to support SMEs providing healthy foods. It's exciting, and I mean, again, we've seen an exciting new funder for the facility. This is the US government, part of a $5 billion announcement over 5 years to build more financing to Feed the Future. For GAIN, in addition to the launch of this financing facility, we are committing to investing a minimum of $250 million over the next 5 years to support implementation in national food systems transformation pathways and to support the identified priority actions. Where we work in countries like Bangladesh, Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Tanzania, working through and with the national, state, and local governments and their systems, and with a wide array of partners. We are also committed to expanding our boundaries to work with new organizations in the spirit of the connectedness that I spoke about between the issues of hunger, health, climate change, environment, and livelihoods. So that means we'll be working with more and new actors, with new government departments, with new businesses, and many more. So to wrap up, I want to leave you all with one thought. And this is a perspective that was shared with me by a respected colleague last week, which I think is really important to share, as I believe some of our audience today are the micro, small, and medium enterprises that will drive all of these transformations that we've been talking about. So we've done a lot of talking. It is now time for doing. All these promises and pledges and the new energy means significant new investments. So my charge to you all is to get ready, or others will position themselves and take advantage of this new investment. There's lots of money, lots of new thinking on the table. We in Africa have the capacity in our respective countries to do what needs to be done. The change should be made by us, not for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojo. So well articulated. Indeed, we as Africans, we have to take action now we have the answers, we have the know-how, we have it all here within the continent. And it is a platform such as this where we are able to bring to forth these ideas and see how to then best move forward. I think one of the key things that you have highlighted, especially, is the sectoral, multi-stakeholder engagements and initiatives and commitments, and bringing together what we are calling again the unusual suspects. So it is time indeed to take action. So thank you so much for your comments. We will get into our panel session, and I will invite my colleague Yewande to take us through that session. Before we take your questions and answers, please remember to continue putting them in the chat. We shall address them towards the end of the webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Yewande.
Thank you, Grace. And I would like to add to what Dr. Ojo said. Very inspiring. I like the fact that he said the change must be made by us, not for us, and that is what Nutrition Conversation Africa is about. So thank you for that. As mentioned earlier, in today's session, we'll be discussing the way forward after the UN Food System Summit, what it means for Africa, nutrition stability. And joining us today are 5 distinguished panelists. Please continue to put your questions in the Q&A box. I see one question, so please continue to add questions to it. I would like to begin the discussion with Mr. Obey Nkya. He's the Senior Advisor, Food Systems Transformation for GAIN Tanzania. Obey Nkya is an experienced trained economist. For the past 18 years, he has worked with the government of Tanzania in the areas of budget forecast, budget process, public expenditure review, coordinating government through reading reports, and providing technical inputs. He has been involved in social and economic impact studies and assessment, research, program, design, and evaluation. Welcome, Mr. Obey. Are you with us this morning?
Oh, thank you very much for this invitation and to be in this panel. I think really, thank you, Michael, for a very good introduction, really to say, yeah, a lot has happened because you could see this food system dialogues in the country in 3 phases. Pre-summit phase, where the countries really, we engaged in a very good discussions to come out with issues which are necessary for moving forward. During the summit, we had a lot of commitment, a lot of good things coming, but the most important thing, what happened after the summit to those things which the stakeholders came up with, because this is the people's, like you say, is the people's initiatives. So,
yes. Ms. Obey, yes, thank you. Like, I'm trying to see, I don't see you, so we would like to see your face on the camera.
Is
but,
it?
Yes. But I wanted to ask you, what is the aim of the summit? The aim of the summit has been to rally government to prioritize malnutrition for sustainable gains. How would you rate Africa's uptake of Africa's involvement in the summit?
Sorry, I was trying to put the video.
Oh, okay. Did you get it? Okay, I'll take that again. Okay. The aim of the summit has been to rally government to prioritize malnutrition for sustainable gains. How would you rate Africa's uptake or involvement in this?
Yeah, I think to me, Africa has been well involved, not only during this summit, but there's been a big commitment in African countries to tackle malnutrition. But also during this process of dialogues, we saw a lot of dialogues within the African context to try to come out with solutions to reduce the rate of malnutrition, which are still very high. We also see the participation of a lot of government leaders in the summit itself, and offering some good commitments for moving forward. So I see Africa really did what is supposed to be done, although more could be done. And I think, to me, the post-summit would be important in trying to make Africa government to be more involved and make really utilize of this momentum with the global momentum to end malnutrition or to reduce it is really at a higher rate than is being done today. So I see the future as promising and the government taking lead in all this.
Thank you, Mr. Obi. And I think the goal for us is to rally more African governments to prioritize nutrition, which is very critical for this part of the continent. Thank you very much. To build on the conversation, I'd like to introduce Ms. Aster Zewdie. She's a senior policy advisor for GAIN Ethiopia. She has vast experience in program management, policy advocacy, strategic development, climate finance, and private sector development. Prior to GAIN, Aster worked as a program lead at the International Finance Corporation, IFC. Aster has worked on several projects promoting sustainable markets, development practice, and customized solutions to poverty. Ms. Aster, are you with us this morning? Yes, good morning. Oh, good afternoon on your side. What are some of the key opportunities that have come out of the summit for the African continent?
Thank you, Yewande and Grace, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be part of this conversation. The summit has brought great opportunities for countries. It brought together the countries and global community priorities and commitments towards transforming the food system to address malnutrition and food security in general. As food security and malnutrition are main challenges, especially in Africa, the commitment to support large-scale food fortification, product diversification, to reduce post-harvest loss, food safety, climate-smart agriculture, healthy diets, and food security and risk management, and also the engagement of the private sector are huge opportunities that have come from the summit. Even in preparation for the summit, key stakeholders, including policymakers, private sector, civil society donors, all were engaged in identifying major challenges and possible game changers and developed roadmaps considering multi-sector approach to transform the broken food system, which is quite useful. So it will enable policymakers to make informed policy decisions to address food security and malnutrition in a sustainable manner. Private sector players to see the business case or opportunities in engaging in nutritious diet-related businesses, and development partners and civil society to align their support with the country's food system transformation priorities and roadmap. This whole process is also in line with GAIN values, which is very interesting to address malnutrition, and it also helps to bring different similar like-minded stakeholders to work together towards healthy diets. And the very interesting thing, also an opportunity, was the entire process was supported by not only GAIN, policy advisors or policy-related people, but the whole GAIN top leaders were engaged in this entire process, which was very important.
Thank you, Ms. Zewdie. Thank you. I like the fact that we talked more about the solutions for these challenges, but it also means opportunities for the stakeholders and the small businesses for them to tap into this opportunity. Thank you very much for that. For the next section, I'd like to introduce Ms. Joyce Akpata. She's the head of policy and advocacy at GAIN Nigeria. In this role, she leads GAIN Nigeria's wider influencing agenda and is responsible for ensuring that the interventions led by GAIN and its different partners are coordinated so that overall project and policy goals are met. Prior to this, she was appointed the Director General for the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce, in which she had the responsibility for turning around the chamber positively. Ms. Akpata, welcome this morning.
Thank you very much, Yewande, and it's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. Countries are developing food systems transformation pathways. What do these do? Example, prioritize activities to undertake urgently in the next 5 years. What exactly does this mean for African countries? How are we doing this?
All right, so the food system transformation pathways are essentially a route to developing sustainable food systems that links the focus on food with achievement of the SDGs by 2030. I think this underscores the critical role that the food systems play and its cross-cutting nature in the global development agenda. Indeed, an effective and sustainable and resilient food system has a tremendous impact on a nation because aside ensuring food security and eradicating hunger, it can also create jobs and uplift the economic well-being of a population, thereby improving the nation's economy. So the Food System Summit, by tasking countries to draw up these transformation pathways, has provided an opportunity for coordinated and all-inclusive actions, weaving together multiple interests and perspective from various stakeholders and constituencies. As was mentioned by previous speakers, we had participation from government, private sector, donors, youth, civil society, academia, businesses, and all. And the various dialogues, pre-summit dialogues, provided an opportunity for all the stakeholders to make relevant contributions addressing their specific concerns. And as people and organizations come together through this interdisciplinary approach to explore the nature of the food systems in their various countries and to develop these transformation pathways, they gain a collective sense of importance of working together to ensure they have a more sustainable future by developing pathways that weave together policies with the ownership and commitment to participation from a wide range of actors. So we see that the transformative pathways are expected to serve as a roadmap for nations towards achievement of their short and long-term priorities, drawing out the key elements of the food systems, which would be required to change and evolve over the next 5 to 10 years and indeed beyond. I think the pathways also provide invaluable information about how best to focus and deliver interventions in the various food systems of these countries. And looking at the pathways that have been developed by a few of the countries, we can see that they contain holistic and content-specific goals to drive the identified priorities of these countries. And in doing so, a lot of the countries have taken into consideration their local circumstances. And most of the pathways broadly reflect the emerging themes of the summit and indeed the 2030 agenda. And I think Dr. Opiyo had listed a few of these in his welcome remarks earlier. We're looking at people addressing issues around food access and affordability. We're looking at the planet, considering issues around sustainability and resilience. We're looking at things around peace and stability, partnerships, governance, indeed, which is very important because if you don't have a governance framework, the commitments from government required to implement these pathways would not be there. So that's very, very critical. Of course, how we can leverage on knowledge and innovation as well to drive and inform policy and adaptation and adoption of new technology across the food system. So the pathways basically will support nations to review unsustainable practices and also sustain or support sustainable ones, thereby strengthening governance of the food systems, also indeed facilitating peer learning and evidence-based decision-making, thereby shaping and maintaining these pathways to ensure that over time, they are seen as an evolving task that will continue long after the Food System Summit. I believe that to achieve the aspirations of these countries as contained in these pathways, it's very, very key that government will have to then integrate the pathways into their planning and make relevant budgetary allocations to guarantee implementation, because it's one thing to have these documents and it's another thing to ensure that they are implemented to achieve the desired results. It's very important that at this point, government would see how best they can utilize existing institutions and mechanisms, by improving their responsiveness to these priorities that have been identified in the various pathways. It's important at this point that, with all the momentum that has been built up pre-summit, and on this journey, we would encourage or need to see government finding ways and means of sustaining these momentum to ensure that we achieve the 2030 agenda and indeed improve our food systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Akpata. Thank you. There are obviously clear opportunities for involvement, and sustainability is key. So conversations with action. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Charles Opiyo. He's the Policy and Influencing Manager for GAIN Kenya. Mr. Opiyo is a food system specialist, and he currently plays an advisory role on all matters policy relating to food and nutrition security in Kenya. He's currently the policy lead on the UN Food Systems Plan and Nutrition for Good activities on behalf of GAIN in Kenya. Mr. Opiyo, good afternoon. How are you doing today? Are you with us? I don't see him.
I'm here.
Mr. Opiyo. Oh, good afternoon.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Bendy.
What do you hope the legacy of this summit will be? What do you want the African continent to take from this? What's the legacy for this, from the summit?
Yeah, thank you very much. As you mentioned, it's been a very long and quite engaging process since the discussion around the UN Food Systems Summit began. And basically, as African countries, basically, I think been very much involved in the process of engaging with this process. So I would say that a number of things actually rather have come up, which I think would be an opportunity for Africa to carry forward. One is the fact that we appreciate that for the first time, this was a people summit, where a lot of people have been excluded, especially in food systems programs, looking at policy-making process, had an opportunity to be able to engage and to get their voices heard. And that means that it really has set a new template for African countries to look at our food systems process as a very holistic and multi-sectoral in nature, where, women, young people, the smallholder farmers, people with lived experiences having an opportunity to really express their views. And that is what this particular summit has presented. And we believe that would be something that would carry as a legacy, that some of these commitments are not just a preserve for the very high level government officials, but even the very local farmer should be able to have an opportunity to really carry this forward. Again, we're looking at the kind of investment commitments that have come from various member states, but also from the development partners, which to me was a big deal for Africa, especially looking at, or rather maybe I would say, generally looking at issues in terms of people and planet. You look at, even for instance, when you look at what Gates Foundation has committed in terms of 922 million additional commitment towards nutrition, is not just an achievement, because this is one of the most significant kind of commitment they have made in this particular area. And therefore, as a continent, I think looking at the challenges we are facing even at the moment, especially now brought in with the COVID, the ever increasing number of the population size, climate change issues compounding the whole process, it is an opportunity for us to be able to really tap into these particular resources that have been made available by different governments to be able to transform our food systems. And of course, I would also want to reiterate the fact that Africa Development Bank has already projected that close to 23 million Africans are likely to be pushed into extreme poverty in the next couple of years if something is not done urgently. That is also linked to close to another 20 million jobs that are likely to be lost. So this is because we have a number of things that we are facing as a continent. But I think with this kind of increased investments, the new thinking that has come from the Food System Summit should be an opportunity to rescue and to be able to really focus and look at our policies, look at our implementation plans and the pathways that we have committed to as member states to be able to ensure that we save the situation, not just for people, but also looking at the planetary commitments that we've made, even through the various commitments that we've had before. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity in terms of issues of research and data that came out very much. In fact, the role of science in terms of informing our decision making is something that I think African countries needs to learn very effectively to really go back to what is workable. If you're talking about nutrition, what is it that is available within our continent that we might want to go to? And that means that even looking at the forgotten or indigenous and nutritious foods that a lot of the times have not been able to really gain due attention, we can now go back and look at what is it that we can be able to do, including looking at what I call low cost but high impact interventions like food fortification, looking at biofortification and emerging opportunities to be able to address issues in terms of micronutrient deficiency and also the other forms of malnutrition that we're currently facing. So it's a big deal for us, and not just the people, but also for the planet, because for the first time there's a bit more of integration, looking at the 5 action tracks that were laid out at the onset, which has really informed the conversation right from where we started and where we hope now with the pathways we can easily get to really achieve the Agenda 2030 that we so desire. So basically that's the brief I want to say, that we have opportunities in that space. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Opiyo. Thank you.
Yeah.
We talked about the challenges, we talked about the solutions,
Yeah.
and everything seems like a lot. But I like that you talked about what is workable, what is more realistic, and how can we go about it? What can be done? We have a diverse group of policy influencers in the nutrition space on this webinar. And when looking at time, we pretty much have 4 minutes before we get into the Q&A session. I want to throw out a question to everybody on the panel. And please, let's just wrap it out in 30 seconds so that we have time for the Q&A session. Give us one top nutrition priority. What is the top nutrition priority for African countries to focus on the way forward after the UN Food System Summit? Just one word. We'll start with you, Mr. Opiyo, since you're still on. What is the one thing that it's key for African continent to focus on in 30 seconds? Thank you.
I would say that looking at the African common position in terms of the critical pillar is to focus and invest on nutrition-centered food policies that are really very, very affordable, very available, and the homegrown food, looking at school feeding interventions, any very basic opportunity that we can get to provide food to people, let it be nutritious. So I think in that case, we'll be able to really significantly reduce the cost that comes in with the issues to do with malnutrition. So I think looking into that, in terms of high impact but low cost solutions that are made available within the continent, that is where we need to put our resources and policy to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I'll go to Dr. Ojo. Dr. Ojo?
Can you please repeat the question? I was typing in a response
Okay.
to one of the Q&A.
So in 30 seconds, what is the top nutrition priority for African government to focus on? Just one out of the top one.
I think the top one for me really is that we need to focus for food systems on the way that our value chains work. And that answer encompasses a lot of different things. A lot of the problems that we face is because the value chains are not adequately supported. The supply chains, sorry, are not adequately supported. So, the demand is not there for nutritious foods. The production systems are not set up properly. Logistics are not efficient. The little food we produce, a lot of it is wasted. And so if we get the supply chains working, supported, that needs big infrastructure, roads, cooling, etc. That's a big one.
Thank you. And I'd like to add one more question to it. What is your favorite local indigenous food? And everybody has to answer that. We still have a little bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's become a bit international now. I like fried plantain. It's not very healthy because, you have to, you deep fry it. But I enjoy it. So that's my favorite one, apart from meat, of course.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to Mr. Nkya, Nkya.
Okay, no, thank you very much. I think to me, really, I'm looking at the interventions, which looks at the production, consumption, and reaching the table, the nutrient-dense food. So using the sensitive interventions like agriculture, like biofortification and fortification, to me becomes important in reaching many people in an integrated way along the value chain. That to me will work fast because you don't change life of the farmers. They continue the production of the maize they are used to, beans they are used to, but they are more nutrient dense. Yeah.
Thank you. And what's your favorite local indigenous nutritious food?
It is fortified maize, PVA maize, ugali. If you know ugali, ugali is a stiff porridge. Yeah, thank you.
I know ugali.
But
Thank
fortified,
you.
biofortified.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll move. The next question is for Miss Zewdie. The same question, sorry.
Yes.
Miss Aster Zewdie, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. So large scale food fortification can come up at the top because it can address many of the people needs in a very cost-effective manner, and it's a proven way in different countries as well. So fortifying staple foods will be the very critical and important element to be considered.
Thank you. And your favorite indigenous food?
Yeah, definitely. It's injera. It's Ethiopian favorite, food. Yeah, so fortifying those staple foods will be very critical in, changing the dynamics.
Thank you. That's something I have to try. I've never tried that. Thank you.
You should.
And I'll go to Miss Akpata. Same question. Thank you. You're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I just realized I was muted. So in addition to what others have said, I think it's for us as African nations to see how best we can expand and improve on our social protection programs, and look at situations whereby we're able to create food banks that deliver healthy and safe and nutritious food to poor communities, especially in humanitarian emergencies. It's also critical for me to see that we scale up food preservation and home storage, processing to see how best we can minimize food wastage and build up households to ensure they have adequate food stock, for off-season. And in terms of my local, I don't know if beans is considered a local delicacy now, but I think beans, maybe we'll now start thinking of iron fortified beans,
Yeah, beans and noodles. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the discussants and to your for the insights and perspective. It was actually interesting learning about people's different food, local indigenous food. I'll let Grace take over from here as we transition into the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And as you said, that has been a very informative discussion. I think I feel one of the most important things that has come out from this is that we are able to break down what the UN food system means in understandable and accessible language and content. So thank you so much to each one of you for that. I see a couple of questions on the chat box and already some are being answered, but so I think I will first give Caleb, his hand has been up for quite a while, maybe the opportunity to ask his question. Caleb, if you can hear me, you can unmute and ask your question. Caleb Bale. Okay. Go ahead, Caleb. All right. While he's sorting that out, I see another hand from Musibau Aziz. You can proceed then to ask your question. Maybe your microphones are muted. We can't seem to hear those whose hands are up. So I maybe suggest you put your questions in the chat box. Let me give Professor Kala an opportunity to ask his question, or has, sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Professor Kala.
Such a great privilege to be here, and thank you, Nutritious Africa, for what you're doing and again. It's such an excellent initiative to bring all key stakeholders together to look at, what common future we can build together. And I like, the emphasis that has been raised, that together we can raise, Africa that is free from malnutrition together, not for us, but with us, and, looking at our own common goals. I would like to see, coming from the point of view of academia, what role with your organization and Gain Africa has in area of capacity building, particularly from the universities and other institutions, and in the areas of also research and development. Because if we must produce dense foods or high quality nutritious food, then we cannot underplay the role of research and development. And in practical terms, how are we going to engage the university communities in the various countries, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, and other places, and to see that we look at both the indigenous foods that might be nutritious, that needs a little push, that might be culturally very much acceptable, and to introducing also new value chains along the line, so that we have a win-win situation. So it is in this respect that I feel that maybe either Dr. Ojo or any of the speakers could address my situations and what future engagements academics like me could contribute to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kala. Dr. Ojo, you want to take it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Kala. I think it's a really, really good point. One of the reasons I think that is because I just came back from the Nutrition Society of Nigeria's annual conference, which happened last week in Nigeria, and we were talking about food systems. And one of the things that it has become clear to me is that the conversation on food systems has actually raised the profile of nutrition, and all the other academic disciplines are connected to food. And that's important because it would seem to me that a lot of people were not, what's the right word? We're not proud of being within the nutrition of food sector. And so they finish from university and try to get into other lines of work. But now there's a big emphasis on food systems, on nutrition. And that's really important for just building confidence amongst those who are studying these programs. But in the Nigeria context, the conversations that we had, the very first set of solution clusters actually has quite a lot of emphasis on nutrition education through curricular development and revisions at primary school, secondary school, and also a different way of actually positioning tertiary institutions. One thing that I would ask you, from the university sector to do is to really build the capacity to be key players in this process, to be consultants, to be knowledge partners, to do those things that we end up having international consultancies and so do, because the capacity is there. Speaking to people in the field, in universities, I know the capacity is there, but there isn't that entrepreneurial spirit or way of working, and that really needs to be developed so that you can also take advantage of all of these new investments coming into the nutrition and food system space.
Thank you, Dr. Ojo. Thank you. I will raise Caleb's question because he had raised his hand a while back and his mic was not audible. I think this is with regards to what Ms. Akpata had mentioned about the meal kits, and Caleb is asking, how does GAIN intend to support local startups in Africa that help Africans have access and achieve healthy nutrition lifestyles by providing meal kits tailored to their needs? Ms. Akpata?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the last bit of your question, Grace.
The question is, how does GAIN intend to support local startups in Africa that help Africans have access and achieve healthy nutrition lifestyles by providing meal kits that are tailored to their needs?
Okay, in terms of supporting startups, we have what we call the Scaling Up Nutrition Network, the SBN network, which basically focuses on working with nutripreneurs and businesses within the nutrition space to build capacity and expand their reach. Indeed, like various conversations we've had, we've seen the importance of SMEs and how they contribute within the sector. And for a large number of companies within the agricultural or nutrition space, we have realized that a lot of SMEs play in this space. So we come up with various capacity building and technical assistance initiatives to see how best we can work with these small and medium-sized businesses to build their capacity to deliver on nutritious food and food products. Like I think some other speaker had mentioned, we also see how best we can engage and promote consumption of biofortified food varieties. And in terms of engaging with these small businesses as well, we encourage them to ensure that when producing the various food products, they opt for the biofortified varieties or fortified varieties, you know, that we were able to address issues of malnutrition and hunger within the space, you know, utilizing products from these small and medium-sized businesses.
Thank you for that. There's a question for Mr. Opiyo about young people and system transformation agenda. Charles, over to you.
Sorry, I don't know whether I missed that bit. You are talking about the food.
There's a question. Yes, there's a question that is addressed to you that is asking how, that is bringing in the angle about youth and youth engagement.
Oh yeah, great.
How can we continue to engage them moving forward, Africa's food system transformation agenda?
Great. I think that's one thing that we have to very much emphasize, because basically as you look at the demographic, even in this particular continent, we know very well that it's a very young population, a young kind of, having a young population. So that means that we really have to really give the young people the space, support them, provide opportunities, and see how we can engage them very meaningfully. So I believe the movement about Act for Food, Act for Change is something that should be, supported. And I think opportunities like in the learning institutions are looking at what Kenya has just committed from the UN Food Systems Summit, and in terms of the reviving, the role of young people, looking at the 4K clubs and all these things in learning institutions, it means that already they're being repositioned and given an opportunity to be able to really drive the agenda effectively. So I think just looking at what commitments we have made in different countries, and I believe looking at even the common pillar within the African common positions, you'll definitely realize that young people, or rather the role of youth is also given the center stage. And that's what I would want to say, that look at those opportunities to be able to really continue engaging with a lot of young people who may have not really had a chance, especially to really have participated effectively in this particular summit, especially including the dialogues that we were very much involved in at country levels. So I think that is an opportunity that we can take advantage of, especially talking from the Kenya perspective, given the opportunity, the school health interventions that we're looking at.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time just for maybe one question. I had seen one by David Onochie where he had addressed it to Dr. Ojo. I'm not sure if that had been answered. With regards to trade laws, how do we ensure that our locally produced foods get generally acceptable as opposed to the imported foods? How can the trade laws help to implement such a policy? This was for Dr. Ojo.
Yes, thanks. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't know that we will have the time to do this, but I think, maybe a couple of important things to mention. Our governments need to really understand the dynamics of global trade, especially from the food perspective, and really have strategies about how we engage with that whole system. Like I said, there's a lot to unpack. But I think the second part of it is actually what we do as a population, as a you know, a group of people who are producing and putting food on the market. Taking the example from Nigeria, there seems to be a complete breakdown in regards to food safety, awareness, and practice. And so we can't get foods into global markets if they are not safe. And so the things that we get away with in our countries will not, you know, successfully pass through global qualities checks and systems. And so we need to really focus on making our food safe and exportable, and then engage with the global system around this. But finally, there's a lot of hunger here. If I was in agriculture in a country like Nigeria with 200 million people, I'll be looking to actually feed this country first. We're big producers of many you know, food items, commodities, cassava, maize, rice, but yet we still have gaps. And so the opportunity is there to invest and grow and produce the food locally before we even start thinking of export. So like I said, I've tried to jump around about 3 or 4 things, but there's a lot to unpack, but there's a lot more that we need to do, both as a government and as people.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I know the questions are numerous, and we've not yet been able to address all of them. And we encourage, actually, I think one of the conversation that you've just sparked right now with that question on trade, David Onochie, I propose having a look at the Nutrition Conversations Africa website. Our previous webinar was about taking advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And those are some of the discussions that we had on that. So that might be useful for you. And I also would encourage you to please, you know, send in your questions, reflections, observations, email us at info@nutritionconversationsafrica.com, because we will not be able to answer everything here, but from that platform, we shall be able to address your questions or direct them accordingly. So please email us, reach us on that email. So we have 3 minutes to time, and I would like to say a very big thank you to each one of you who has attended today, for your thoughts, your contributions, to the awesome panelists who have been here. Your input has been very valuable. Dr. Ojo, for coming in to give us the opening remarks and for all the feedback that you've been able to give on this webinar. We look forward to hosting you in our next webinar. And as many of you have asked here in the chat box, you know, how do we do this? How do we go about this? It may seem insurmountable at this time, but, you know, baby steps, one step at a time, 1 foot forward. And indeed, just really underscoring what Dr. Ojo said at the beginning. The solutions are in Africa. We can do it. We have the capacity to do it. So it is rising above all the noise of all that is not working and finding solutions that will propel us to the next stage. So with those few remarks, I hand over back to Wendy to give her final thoughts, and then we can wrap up.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Let's get the conversation going. Let's keep it going. But most importantly, more actions, not just conversations. The time to act is now. As Dr. Ojo mentioned, this is the time. Change needs to be made by us, not for us. And that is what Nutrition Conversation Africa is about. So we'd like to hear from everybody, stakeholders, everybody participating. Check out the website, email us, we'll answer the question, and let's have more conversations like this. Thank you. A big thank you to all our panelists for your time, and the people attending for the engagement. We really appreciate it. Thank you, and we look forward to more conversations.
Bye-bye, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Such a real great time.